Something was wrong. The silence came first. Not the normal kind, the expected, calculated quiet of deep space, but a dead, unnatural absence that made seasoned officers shift in their seats without knowing why. On the command deck, dozens of sensor feeds streamed in perfect order, every system reporting green, every diagnostic flawless. And yet, something was missing. "Run the scan again," Commander Velk said, his voice steady, but his fingers tapping once against the console. "It already ran 3 times, the technician replied. "Same result every time." Velk leaned forward. The main display showed a sector of space that should not have been empty. According to every record, every chart, every archived scan in the last 100 cycles, there was supposed to be an active battlefield there. A war had been happening. A large one. 2 dominant fleets had entered that region less than 12 standard hours ago. Energy signatures, weapon discharges, fleet formations, everything had been tracked in real time. And now? Nothing. No debris. No radiation spikes. No drifting wreckage. Not even dust. Just absence. "That's not possible," Velk muttered. "We thought the same," another officer said. "We expanded the scan radius. There's no trace of either fleet." Velk's eyes narrowed. Not even residual energy? Negative. That made no sense. Even the cleanest annihilation left something behind. Heat, distortion, fragments, something for physics to cling to. Entire fleets didn't just vanish. No, Velk cut the thought off before it fully formed. That would violate. "Commander," the navigation officer interrupted, her voice tight now. "We're receiving delayed telemetry from an outer probe." Velk turned instantly. "Display it." The screen flickered. Static bled across the feed before stabilizing into fragmented data logs, time-stamped recordings from a long-range observation drone that had been positioned at the edge of the conflict zone. "Playback," Velk ordered. At first, it looked normal. Weapon fire. Fleet maneuvers. Shield impacts. The chaotic symmetry of large-scale warfare. Then it changed. The logs began to stutter. Frames dropped. Sensor readings spiked beyond measurable limits, then flatlined, then surged again in patterns that no known system could produce. "What is that?" someone whispered. The image distorted, ships flickering in and out of existence, as if reality itself couldn't decide whether they were there or not. And then, everything stopped. Not exploded. Not destroyed. Stopped. Frozen mid-action for a fraction of a second, before vanishing entirely. The feed cut to black. Silence filled the command deck. "No energy spike," the technician said slowly, rechecking the data. "No detonation signature. No gravitational disturbance. They just disappeared." Velk felt a cold weight settle in his chest. "That's not destruction," he said quietly. "Then what is it?" the navigation officer asked. No one answered. Because there was no answer. Velk straightened. "Expand the scan grid. I want deep spectrum sweeps, everything from subspace to quantum echo detection. If something did this, it left a trace. It has to." "Yes, Commander." The crew moved quickly now, tension replacing routine efficiency. Fingers flew across consoles. Systems recalibrated. New scans began slicing through layers of space most species barely understood. Minutes passed. Then one of the analysts froze. "Commander." Velk turned. "Report." "I'm detecting something." "Where?" The analyst hesitated. "That's the problem. It's everywhere." The main display shifted again. A faint pattern began to emerge, not in one location, but across the entire scanned region. Subtle distortions. Almost invisible. Like something had passed through space itself and left it slightly altered. Velk stared at it. "Zoom in." The system complied. The distortions weren't random. They formed lines. Trajectories. Paths. As if something had moved through the battlefield at impossible speed, touching everything and leaving nothing behind. A silence heavier than before settled over the deck. "That's a movement pattern," Velk said. "Yes," the analyst whispered. "But it doesn't match any known propulsion system." Velk's jaw tightened. How fast? The analyst ran the numbers. Then stopped. I can't calculate it. Why not? Because the timestamps don't make sense. It appears in multiple points at the same time. A ripple of unease spread through the crew. That's impossible, someone said. Velk didn't respond. He was staring at the pattern, at the lines cutting through what should have been a battlefield, at the absence left behind. This shouldn't be happening, he said, more to himself than anyone else. And for the first time since he took command, Commander Velk didn't feel in control. He looked at the silent map of vanished fleets and impossible movement, and asked the only question that mattered. What are we missing? They had rules for everything. Across the galactic concord, survival wasn't luck, it was structure. Every species that reached the stars eventually learned the same truth. Chaos killed, but order endured. Over thousands of cycles, that belief had been refined into systems so precise that nothing was left to chance. Every environment was classified. Every threat was measured. Every anomaly was either explained or eliminated. That was how the galaxy stayed stable. Commander Velk stood at the center of it now, surrounded by the quiet hum of a system that had never failed, until this moment. Pull up the Concord classification matrix, he ordered. The main display shifted instantly, replacing the distorted scan patterns with a vast, layered framework of known space. Color-coded sectors, threat levels, environmental extremes, all mapped with absolute clarity. This is what we know, Velk said, almost as if reminding himself. The science officer nodded. Every habitable zone, every hostile region, every recorded phenomenon, cataloged and verified. Nothing like this? Velk asked. No, she replied. Not even close. That was the problem. The Concord didn't deal in mysteries. If something existed, it had already been studied, categorized, and placed within the system. Even the most dangerous anomalies, black star collapses, quantum fractures, subspace predators, they all followed rules. Everything followed rules. Velk pointed to the empty sector where the fleets had vanished. According to the matrix, what should be there? The navigation officer answered immediately. Standard conflict zone. No environmental hazards. No spatial distortions. No recorded anomalies. In other words, Velk said, nothing that could wipe out two fleets without a trace. Correct. Velk exhaled slowly. Then either our data is wrong, or our understanding is. A quiet tension settled over the room. Because if the system was wrong, then everything built on it was vulnerable. Run cross-references, Velk continued. I want to know if anything in recorded history even resembles this. The crew complied. Archives opened. Data streams flooded the system. Thousands of past incidents, anomalies, and classified reports were scanned in seconds. Patterns were compared. Variables were matched. Nothing fit. There are a few partial similarities, the science officer said after a moment. Localized disappearances. Unstable spatial zones. But nothing on this scale. Nothing that removes matter without residue. Velk nodded. That was expected. Because this wasn't just destruction. It was absence. Then we're dealing with something outside the matrix, he said. No one liked that answer. Outside the matrix meant outside predictability. Outside control. Commander, another analyst spoke up, hesitant. There is one category that doesn't fully align with the system. Velk turned. Explain. It's not a threat classification, the analyst said. It's more of a statistical irregularity. Velk's eyes narrowed. Go on. The analyst brought up a secondary dataset, one that looked far less structured than the Concord matrix. Instead of clean classifications, it showed scattered reports, inconsistencies, outliers. These are events that were never fully integrated into the system, the analyst explained. Because they don't behave consistently. Velk stepped closer. Why not? Because they involve variables we can't predict. The pause. Then the analyst highlighted a recurring tag buried deep within the data. A single word. Humans. A few officers exchanged glances. Velk didn't react immediately. Clarify. Human-related encounters often produce irregular data, the analyst said. Unexpected survival rates. Unusual problem-solving patterns. Situations where outcomes deviate from calculated probabilities. That's not new, the science officer said. Adaptive species exist. Yes, the analyst agreed. But not like this. Humans don't just adapt within the rules, they tend to ignore them. A few quiet scoffs echoed across the deck. They're inefficient, one officer said. Unoptimized. Their technology is inconsistent at best. And yet, the analyst replied carefully, they appear in a disproportionate number of unresolved incidents. Velk folded his arms. Are you suggesting humans are responsible for this? No, the analyst said quickly. There's no direct evidence of that. I'm saying, when something doesn't follow expected patterns, humans are often involved. Velk looked back at the empty sector. 2 fleets, gone without a trace. A phenomenon that broke every known rule. And now, an irregularity in the only dataset that didn't follow rules either. Correlation isn't causation, Velk said. Agreed. But it's not something we ignore, he added. The room fell silent again. Velk turned to the main display once more, where the faint distortion patterns still lingered beneath the data overlays. Everything in this galaxy operates within boundaries, he said slowly. Physics. Energy. Even anomalies have limits. He paused. Except this. No one argued. Because deep down they all felt it now. This wasn't just an unknown phenomenon. It was something that didn't belong in the system at all. The navigation officer swallowed. Commander, if it's not bound by the rules. Velk finished the thought for her. Then we don't know how to stop it. A heavier silence followed that. The kind that didn't come from confusion, but from realization. Velk stared at the data one last time, his mind turning over the same conclusion again and again. The Concorde had been built on certainty, on predictability, on the belief that everything could be understood. But out there, in that empty sector, something had just proven otherwise. And if it didn't follow the rules, then the rules wouldn't save them. Everything follows rules, Velk said quietly. His eyes remained fixed on the distortion patterns. Except this. The first anomaly didn't look like a threat. That was what made it dangerous. Commander, we found a match. Velk turned sharply. Where? The main display shifted, zooming away from the empty battlefield into a distant sector, far from major trade routes, far from any strategic interest. A single planet appeared on screen, rotating slowly in dim starlight. At first glance, it looked unremarkable. Then the data loaded. Atmospheric pressure, extreme. Surface temperature, unstable, ranging between freezing collapse and thermal spikes. Tectonic activity, constant. Magnetic field, erratic. Classify it, Velk said. The system responded instantly. Designation, uninhabitable. Survival probability, 0. Velk nodded. That was expected. Then why are we looking at it? The analyst hesitated. Because something is alive down there. Silence. That's not possible, one of the officers said immediately. The analyst didn't argue. Instead, they pushed the data forward. Long-range bioscans detected movement. At first, we assumed it was sensor error. But the signal is consistent. Velk stepped closer. Zoom surface. The image sharpened, clouds of dense atmospheric interference swirling across a broken landscape. Jagged terrain. Violent storms tearing across the surface like living things. And then, movement. Faint at first. Then clearer. Something was there. That's a life form, the navigation officer whispered. Confirmed, the analyst said. And it's not just surviving, it's active. Velk's mind immediately went to the Concorde matrix. No known species can withstand those conditions, he said. Correct. Then it shouldn't exist. Correct. Velk stared at the screen. And yet it did. Enhance tracking, he ordered. The system locked onto the movement. A small figure, barely visible against the chaos of the planet's surface, moving with deliberate intent, not struggling, not reacting in panic. Adapting. No protective field detected, the analyst added. No environmental shielding. No external support. That's impossible, another officer muttered. Velk didn't respond, because the word was starting to lose meaning. What's its behavior pattern? He asked. The data shifted again. It's exploring, the analyst said slowly. Moving across unstable terrain, adjusting path in real time. Avoiding hazards before they fully form. Velk's eyes narrowed. Predictive movement? Yes. But not based on standard models. It's not calculating the environment, it's reacting to it. Instinct? More than that, the analyst replied. It's learning. A quiet unease spread through the room. From what? Someone asked. There shouldn't be enough time, the science officer said. That environment changes too fast. No organism could adapt that quickly. And yet, Velk said quietly, it is. The feed flickered slightly as another thermal spike surged across the planet's surface. The ground cracked open in the distance, molten energy bursting through before collapsing again. The life form didn't hesitate. It changed direction instantly. Not randomly. Precisely. As if it had seen it coming. Velk felt that same cold weight return. This isn't survival, he said. No, the analyst agreed. It's something else. The data continued streaming in, building a clearer picture with every second. Metabolic readings fluctuating beyond known biological limits. Neural activity spiking unpredictably. Behavior patterns that refused to stabilize into anything the system could model. Try to classify it, Velk said. The system processed. Then responded. Classification, unknown. A rare answer. An uncomfortable one. Run historical crosscheck, Velk added. Has anything like this ever been recorded? The system scanned. Seconds passed. No exact matches. Velk expected that. But then the analyst spoke again. There is a partial correlation. Velk looked at them. With what? The analyst hesitated for just a moment. Then brought up the tag again. Humans. A few officers shifted uneasily. That's not confirmation, the science officer said quickly. Just statistical overlap. Of course, the analyst agreed. But the behavioral patterns, rapid adaptation, unpredictable response, environmental defiance, it aligns. Velk looked back at the moving figure on the surface. A single life form. On a planet where nothing should survive. Moving like it belonged there. This doesn't prove anything, he said. No, the analyst replied. But it raises a question. Velk didn't ask what question. He already knew. Because it was the same one forming in his mind. If something could survive there. If something could adapt that fast. Then what else could it survive? The feed glitched for a fraction of a second. Just a flicker. But enough. The life form's position jumped. Not moved. Jumped. From one location to another. Did you see that? The navigation officer said. Yes, the analyst replied, already rechecking the data. But it's not possible. There's no recorded movement between those points. Velk's voice hardened. Explain. I can't, the analyst said. It's like it wasn't there, and then it was. The room went silent again. Velk stared at the screen, at the impossible movement, at the anomaly that shouldn't exist. And then he saw it. A faint distortion. The same kind they had detected in the empty battlefield. Subtle. Almost invisible. But unmistakable. His chest tightened. Overlay previous anomaly data, he ordered. The system complied. The patterns aligned. Perfectly. A slow realization spread across the command deck. This isn't isolated, the science officer whispered. No, Velk said. His eyes never left the screen. It's connected. The storms on the planet intensified, tearing across the surface with violent force. And in the middle of it, the anomaly moved again. Unaffected. Unstoppable. And completely beyond anything the system could understand. Velk spoke quietly, almost to himself. Impossible, but it's happening. Because whatever this was, it didn't just break the rules. It ignored them completely. The second anomaly shouldn't have existed. Not because it was similar, but because it was the exact opposite. Commander, you need to see this. Velk didn't look away from the previous feed immediately. The storm-ravaged planet was still active on one side of the display, its violent chaos now feeling almost predictable compared to what they were about to face. Put it up, he said. The screen shifted. Darkness filled the display. Not the usual emptiness of space, but a dense, crushing void where even light seemed reluctant to exist. Location? Velk asked. Outer fringe of the null expanse, the navigation officer replied. Beyond mapped territory. Velk's expression hardened. That region is classified as non-viable. Yes, sir. That was an understatement. The null expanse wasn't just uninhabitable, it was considered structurally hostile to existence itself. No stable energy fields. No consistent physics. Even automated probes sent into that region had a failure rate approaching total loss. Nothing survived there. Nothing lasted long enough to be studied. Then why are we looking at it? Velk asked. The analyst answered this time. Because we're detecting the same pattern. A silence fell instantly. Show me. The data layered in. At first, it looked like noise, random distortions flickering at the edge of sensor capability. But as the system refined the scan, the pattern became clear. Lines. Trajectories. Identical to the ones found in the vanished battlefield. And on the impossible planet. Velk felt the connection lock into place. Zoom deeper. The system hesitated for a fraction of a second, then complied. The void sharpened. And something moved. It wasn't a life form. It wasn't a ship. It was presence. A distortion in space itself, shifting through the darkness in a way that defied direction, velocity, or any known concept of movement. Tracking is unstable, the analyst said. It doesn't follow a path, it appears along one. Velk narrowed his eyes. Clarify. It's not traveling from point A to point B, the analyst said slowly. It exists at both points, and everything in between just catches up. No one spoke after that. Because that wasn't movement. That was something else entirely. Environmental readings? Velk asked. Non-existent, the science officer replied. No stable matter. No breathable atmosphere. No thermal consistency. It's a vacuum that actively disrupts structure. In other words, Velk said, nothing should be able to exist there. Yes. They all stared at the shifting distortion. And yet, something did. Is it the same anomaly? The navigation officer asked quietly. Velk didn't answer immediately. Overlay patterns, he said. The system aligned the data from all three locations. Battlefield. Hostile planet. Null expanse. The trajectories matched. Not similar. Identical. A ripple of unease moved through the crew. That means, one of the officers started. It's the same entity, the analyst finished. Velk's jaw tightened. Or the same phenomenon, he corrected. We don't assume intelligence yet. But even as he said it, no one believed that. Because randomness didn't produce patterns like this. Behavior analysis, Velk ordered. The system struggled for a moment before producing fragmented results. Movement is consistent across all environments, the analyst said. No variation in response to external conditions. That's not possible, the science officer said. The environments are completely different. One is hyperchaotic. The other is structurally void. There's no common variable. Velk spoke quietly. There is one. They all looked at him. He said. Silence. Because that was the only constant. The anomaly didn't adapt to the environment. The environment didn't matter to it at all. Commander. The navigation officer's voice was tight now. If it can exist in both extremes. Velk finished the thought again. Then there are no extremes. The weight of that settled heavily. Everything the Concord understood about survival was based on limits. Every species, every system, every known law depended on boundaries. Too hot, you burn. Too cold, you freeze. Too unstable, you collapse. But this ignored all of it. Track its interaction radius, Velk said. The system complied. A faint field began to form around the distortion, Subtle, but measurable. What am I looking at? Velk asked. The analyst swallowed. A zone of influence. Define it. Anything that enters that radius, the analyst hesitated. Say it. Stops following normal rules. A chill ran through the room. Velk's eyes flicked back to the battlefield data. To the fleets that had vanished. No explosions. No debris. No energy release. Just absence. As if they were removed, the science officer whispered. Velk nodded slowly. Or rewritten. No one liked that word, because it implied something far worse than destruction. Commander, the analyst said, voice strained now. There's more. Velk didn't look away. Report. We're detecting brief signal echoes inside the anomaly's path. What kind of echoes? Fragments, the analyst said. Residual data, like something tried to exist there and failed. Velk's chest tightened. Show me. The display flickered. For a split second, shapes appeared. Chips. Broken. Distorted. Incomplete. Then gone. Like they had never been there at all. The same fate as the battlefield. The same pattern. Velk spoke quietly. It doesn't destroy. No one responded. Because they were all thinking the same thing. It erases, he finished. The word hung in the air. Heavy. Final. The distortion moved again. Effortless. Unaffected. Crossing a region where reality itself struggled to remain stable. And ignoring it completely. Velk stared at it, the realization settling deeper with every passing second. It survives everything, he said. But even that didn't feel accurate anymore. Because survival implied resistance. Struggle. Adaptation. This did none of those things. It didn't survive the environment. It existed beyond it. And for the first time, Commander Velk began to wonder if they weren't observing an anomaly, but encountering something that had never been bound by the rules in the first place. It wasn't random. That was the first conclusion that didn't feel like a guess. Velk stood in silence as the data stabilized across all three anomalies. The battlefield, the impossible planet, and the null expanse were now layered together on the main display. Separate locations, completely different conditions, yet connected by something precise. Run synchronized analysis, he ordered. The system obeyed instantly. Streams of information began aligning, timestamps, movement patterns, distortion signatures, interaction zones. For the first time since this began, the chaos started to look structured. Commander, the analyst's voice was lower now. The trajectories are updating. Velk stepped closer. Explain. They're not just matching, the analyst said. They're forming a sequence. A ripple of tension moved across the room. Sequence. Velk repeated. Yes. The anomaly didn't appear in these locations randomly. It moved through them in order. The display shifted again. A timeline formed beneath the three mapped points. Battlefield, first. Planet, second. Null expanse, third. Velk's eyes narrowed. Time intervals? Consistent, the analyst replied. Not equal, but intentional. Like it paused, then continued. That word mattered. Why would it stop? The navigation officer asked. Velk didn't answer immediately. Because now, this wasn't just movement. It was behavior. Zoom into the first event, Velk said. The battlefield data expanded. The distortion paths reappeared, slicing through the positions where fleets once existed. Analyze interaction points, Velk continued. The system highlighted multiple locations, each one marking where the anomaly had intersected with ships. And now the second, Velk said. The display shifted to the hostile planet. The same pattern. But this time, the anomaly didn't just pass through. It lingered. Tracking logs showed repeated movement across the same region. Adjustments. Variations. Almost like it was observing. Why does it behave differently here? The science officer asked. Velk's voice was quiet. Because this environment didn't collapse. That realization hit hard. The battlefield, gone instantly. The planet, still there. Still resisting. Meaning, the analyst asked. Velk pointed at the data. It didn't need to stay in the battlefield. Everything was already removed. A heavy silence followed. But here, he continued, gesturing to the planet, something remained. The life form. The impossible survivor. Overlay the movement pattern with the life form's position, Velk ordered. The system complied. The room went still. The paths aligned. Not loosely. Not approximately. Exactly. The anomaly had moved around the life form. Not randomly. Deliberately. Tracking it. Studying it. Avoiding direct contact, but never leaving its proximity for long. That's not coincidence, the navigation officer whispered. No, Velk said. It's focus. The implication settled in. Out of everything in that chaotic, deadly environment, the anomaly had chosen one target. Why? Someone asked. No one had an answer. But the question had changed. This wasn't what is it? Now was, what does it want? Velk turned back to the display. Show me the third location again. The null expanse filled the screen. The distortion moved as before, fluid, untouchable. But now, with the previous patterns in mind, something new became visible. It's not wandering, Velk said. The analyst adjusted the projection. A path emerged. Directed. It's heading somewhere, the analyst confirmed. Can you extrapolate the destination? Velk asked. The system processed. For longer than expected. A projection appeared. A point beyond the mapped region. Uncharted. Unknown. A silence deeper than before settled over the deck. So it's not just reacting, the science officer said slowly. It has direction. Velk nodded. And purpose. The weight of that word changed everything. Because purpose meant intent. And intent meant this wasn't just a phenomenon. Commander. The analyst hesitated again. There's one more thing. Velk didn't look away. Say it. The timing between events, it's decreasing. Velk's eyes sharpened. Explain. It reached the battlefield, then the planet after a measurable delay. Then the null expanse even faster. If this pattern continues, it accelerates, Velk finished. Yes. A chill spread across the room. Meaning whatever it's doing, the navigation officer said quietly. It's getting closer to finishing, Velk completed. Silence. The kind that comes when something clicks into place. And you wish it hadn't. Velk's mind ran through everything again. The erased fleets. The impossible survivor. The tracking behavior. The directed movement. Not random. Not chaotic. Connected. This isn't an anomaly, he said finally. No one interrupted. Because they already knew. It's a process. The word hung in the air. Cold. Precise. Terrifying. Then what's the end of that process? The science officer asked. Velk didn't answer immediately. He was staring at the projected destination. At the unknown point ahead. At the place this thing was heading toward. And for the first time, he wasn't thinking about what it had done. He was thinking about what it would do next. This isn't random, he said quietly. And that realization was far worse than chaos. Because chaos could be survived. But something with a plan. Something moving step by step, learning, adapting, choosing. That was something else entirely. The destination wasn't empty. That assumption died the moment deeper scans came online. Velk stood rigid as the projection sharpened. What had first appeared as a blank coordinate, just another dead zone beyond mapped space, began to resolve into something structured. Enhance resolution, he ordered. The system complied. Lines appeared. Not natural formations. Not debris. Geometry. Perfect. Repeating. Artificial. A structure. No, the science officer whispered. That's impossible. Velk didn't respond. His focus locked onto the emerging shape. It was massive. Not in the way fleets were massive, but in the way something ancient feels massive. A scale that wasn't meant to be understood all at once. Full spectrum scan, Velk said. The results came back fragmented. Energy readings fluctuated wildly. Sections of the structure seemed to exist, then not, phasing in and out of detectable space. It's unstable, the analyst said. Velk shook his head slowly. No, it's not unstable. He stepped closer. It's layered. The realization shifted the entire perspective. This thing isn't broken, he continued. It's operating on multiple states at once. We're only seeing fragments of it. The room fell quiet again. Because that meant one thing. What they were seeing wasn't the full structure. Estimate size, Velk ordered. The system struggled. Calculations flickered, recalibrated, failed, then finally returned an approximation. The number made the analyst freeze. It's larger than the entire battlefield zone, he said. A cold silence spread. Larger than fleets. Larger than planetary engagement ranges. This wasn't a station. It wasn't a weapon. It was something else entirely. Is it active? The navigation officer asked. Velk didn't answer immediately. Scan for emissions, he said instead. The system adjusted. For a moment, nothing. The pulse. Faint, but undeniable. The same signature. The anomaly. It originated from there, the analyst said slowly. Velk nodded once. Or it returned to it. That distinction mattered more than anyone wanted to admit. Because if it originated there, then this structure created it. But if it returned, then this was home. The way. This was the source. Commander. The science officer's voice tightened. There's more. Velk's gaze didn't shift. Continue. The pulses, they're not random. Of course they're not, Velk muttered. They're synchronized. That made him pause. With what? He asked. The analyst swallowed. With the anomaly's movement. The room went completely still. Explain, Velk said. The structure emits a pulse, then the anomaly changes trajectory. Every time. Without fail. Velk's jaw tightened. So it's not just moving with purpose, he said. It's being guided. Communicating. The thought formed, uninvited. Show me the sequence, Velk ordered. The display split. On one side, the structure. On the other, the anomaly's path through space. Pulse. Pulse. Perfect synchronization. This isn't passive, the navigation officer said. No, Velk agreed. It's control. Or something even worse. Coordination. Velk's mind moved fast now. The battlefield, erased. The planet, studied. The null expanse, crossed. Each step faster than the last. Each movement guided. Leading here. To this. Zoom into the outer layers, Velk said. The system complied, focusing on the visible edges of the structure. Segments. Massive, interlocking segments. Some active. Some dormant. Some missing. Missing, the analyst echoed. Velk pointed. And there. Structural gaps. The system highlighted them. They weren't random damage. They were too precise. Too clean. Like something had been removed. Or deployed. A quiet dread began to form. How many segments are inactive? Velk asked. The system ran the count. The answer came back. 70%. No one spoke. 70%. Dormant. Which meant 30% was active. And already enough to produce what they had witnessed. Velk exhaled slowly. If this is a system, he said, then it's not fully online. The implication hit hard. Because if this was incomplete, then everything they had seen so far was partial. We need to know what this structure is, the science officer said. Velk nodded. But the answer was already forming in his mind. Not from data. From pattern. It's not a station, he said quietly. It's not a weapon. He looked at the synchronized pulses. At the anomaly responding. At the missing segments. At least, not in the way we understand those things. Then what is it? The analyst asked. Velk didn't answer immediately. Because the conclusion wasn't comfortable. It wasn't logical. But it fit. Every piece. Every pattern. Every movement. It's a system designed to do one thing, he said finally. And everything we've seen so far. He paused. Then finished. Is just the beginning of that process. No one asked what the process was. Because deep down, they already knew. It wasn't exploration. It wasn't defense. It wasn't war. It was something far more precise. Far more controlled. And far more final. Another pulse echoed across the display. Stronger this time. Closer. The anomaly responded instantly. This trajectory adjusted, not toward the structure, but toward something else. Something new. Velk's eyes sharpened. New target, he asked. The analyst checked the projection, then froze. Commander. Velk didn't blink. Say it. It's not a new location. The pause. It's a populated system. The silence that followed wasn't shock anymore. It was understanding. Because now, they weren't watching a mystery unfold. They were watching a sequence continue. And they had just identified the next step. Velk didn't hesitate this time. Set full intercept course, he ordered. The bridge snapped into motion instantly. There was no debate left, no uncertainty holding anyone back. Whatever this thing was, whatever system they had uncovered, it was no longer just a mystery. It was moving toward a populated system. And that changed everything. Course plotted, the navigation officer said. Maximum burn will put us ahead of its projected path by 12 minutes. 12 minutes isn't enough, someone muttered. It's all we have, Velk replied sharply. Execute. The ship surged forward. Engines roared to life, pushing beyond standard safety thresholds. The hull groaned under the strain, but no one suggested slowing down. For the first time, they weren't observing. They were racing. Project the target system, Velk said. The display shifted. A stable star. Multiple inhabited worlds. Civilian traffic lanes. Orbital infrastructure. Looked normal. Peaceful. Unaware. They have no idea, the comms officer said quietly. Velk's expression hardened. Open a channel. Broadcast on all frequencies. Message, Commander? He didn't take long. Unknown high-level threat approaching your system. Immediate evacuation protocols recommended. Shut down all non-essential energy signatures. Repeat, this is not a drill. The transmission went out. Seconds passed. Then a response. Fragmented. Confused. This is civilian control. Identify yourself. Your message is inconsistent with. They won't listen in time, the comms officer said. No, Velk agreed. Because he knew why. There was no visible threat. No enemy fleet. No incoming weapons. Just empty space. And a warning that sounded impossible. Exactly like it had sounded to them. Time to intercept? Velk asked. 8 minutes. Too long. Way too long. Track the anomaly, Velk said. The display updated. The pattern was still there. That same impossible movement. That same synchronized response to distant pulses. Now, it was accelerating. It's speeding up, the analyst said, voice tightening. Of course it is, Velk replied. The system ahead was populated. Dense, complex, valuable. If this thing followed the same logic, then it wasn't just passing through. It was targeting. Commander. The science officer leaned forward. The structure just emitted another pulse. Velk didn't look away from the trajectory. Effect. The analyst's hands froze over the console. It changed again. How? The pause. It split. Silence slammed into the bridge. Explain, Velk said, his voice dangerously controlled. The anomaly, it's no longer a single trajectory. The display expanded. Where there had been one path, there were now many. Branching. Diverging. All heading toward the same system. No, someone whispered. It's multiplying. Velk felt the weight of that settle instantly. Not one anomaly. Not one event. A network. A coordinated spread. How many? He asked. The system struggled to keep up. Still calculating. The number kept rising. Every second. More paths. More trajectories. More instances. It's not just targeting the system, the science officer realized. It's mapping it. Velk's mind locked onto that word. Mapping. Not random destruction. Not chaos. Precision. Complete coverage. Every angle. Every orbit. Every structure. Nothing missed. Time to arrival? Velk asked again. 5 minutes. Too close. Far too close. Can we intercept even one? He demanded. The navigation officer ran the projections. then shook her head. Negative. Even at maximum speed, we can only reach the outer edge before impact. Velk clenched his jaw. This wasn't like before. Before, they had watched a battlefield disappear. They were about to watch an entire system. Commander, the analyst's voice dropped. There's another change. Velk didn't turn. Report. The anomaly instances, they're slowing down. That made no sense. Why? Velk asked. No answer came. Because the reason revealed itself seconds later. They're not slowing, the science officer said. They're positioning. The display zoomed in. Each trajectory ended at a precise point. Orbit lines. Planetary surfaces. Stations. Chips. All perfectly distributed. Like pieces being placed on a board. Velk's breath slowed. Not panic. Not fear. Recognition. This is a deployment pattern, he said quietly. Not an attack. Not yet. A setup. Time, he asked one last time. 2 minutes. The system ahead continued its normal operations. Ships moving. Stations active. Worlds alive. Completely unaware. Velk stared at it. At the calm before something unimaginable. And for the first time, he understood the full scale of what they were facing. This wasn't a weapon. It wasn't even a fleet. It was a process. A system executing a function. Perfectly. Relentlessly. And they were about to witness what that function actually was. Brace for observation, Velk said. No one questioned the order. Because there was nothing left to do. They couldn't stop it. They couldn't outrun it. All they could do now was watch. As the countdown reached 0, nothing happened. For a single, impossible moment. Nothing. No explosions. No flashes of energy. No incoming fire. The system remained exactly as it was. Ships continued their routes. Stations rotated in silent precision. Planets turned beneath calm atmospheres. Is that it? Someone whispered. Velk didn't respond. Because he was watching the anomaly markers. Every instance had reached its position. Every trajectory had ended. And now, they were all perfectly still. Hold focus, he said quietly. Seconds passed. Commander, the analyst's voice trembled. I'm detecting localized field generation. Where? Everywhere. The display lit up. Each anomaly point began emitting something subtle, barely detectable at first. A distortion. Not of light. Not of gravity. Something deeper. Frequency? Velk asked. The system tried to classify it. Unknown, the analyst said. It's not matching any known spectrum. Of course it wasn't. Velk leaned forward. Visual enhancement. The system adjusted. And that's when they saw it. Space itself was shifting. Not bending. Not tearing. Rewriting. The stars behind each anomaly point began to smear. Not like motion blur, but like they were being replaced frame by frame with something slightly different. What am I looking at? The navigation officer whispered. Velk didn't answer. Because he understood now. Too late. But clearly. It's not destroying them, he said. The words felt heavy. It's changing them. A sharp breath echoed across the bridge. Changing how? Velk watched the nearest orbital station. At first, nothing seemed wrong. Its structure flickered. Just once. Barely noticeable. But the sensors caught it. Mass fluctuation, the analyst said. Composition shift, no wait. The readings spiraled. Inconsistent data. It's not stable. The station flickered again. Longer. Its outer hull wasn't the same. The shape had altered. Subtle. But wrong. Record everything, Velk ordered. No one needed to be told twice. Across the system, it was happening everywhere. Chips. Stations. Even planetary surfaces. Each anomaly point acted like an anchor, and around each anchor, reality was being rewritten. Layer by layer. Piece by piece. This is controlled, the science officer said, voice shaking now. It's not random mutation. It's following a structure. A template, Velk corrected. A horrifying realization followed. This has been done before. Silence. Because that explained everything. The battlefield. The vanished fleets. The absence of debris. Nothing had been destroyed. It had all been processed. "Commander," the comms officer shouted, "we're receiving transmissions from the system. Patch them through." The bridge filled with voices. Panic. Confusion. "Our station just changed. What is happening?" Ship controls not responding, systems rewriting. "The planet. Something is wrong with the surface." The signals cut in and out. Not because of interference, but because the sources themselves were changing. Velk's grip tightened on the console. "How long until full effect?" he asked. The analyst hesitated. "Based on current rate." The pause. 3 minutes. 3 minutes. That was all it took. To rewrite an entire system. "This isn't an attack," the science officer whispered. "No," Velk said. "It's conversion." The word settled heavily, because it fit too well. Everything they had seen, every step, every pattern, led to this. "Conversion into what?" the navigation officer asked. Velk stared at the shifting stars, at the changing structures, at the system slowly becoming something else. "I don't think we have a word for it," he said. Another pulse hit. Stronger. Faster. The changes accelerated. Ships lost their original forms entirely. Stations became unrecognizable structures. Planets. Even planets were not spared. Surface patterns shifted. Atmospheric compositions fluctuated. Entire ecosystems rewritten. "This is total," the analyst said. "It's not leaving anything untouched." Of course it wasn't. That wouldn't make sense. A system like this didn't miss details. It replaced everything. Perfectly. Completely. Velk felt something settle in his mind. A clarity. Cold. Precise. "This is its purpose," he said. No one asked what he meant. Because they could see it. This wasn't chaos. This wasn't war. This was a process being executed exactly as designed. And they had just witnessed it. From start to finish. "Final stage incoming," the analyst said. The distortions peaked. Reality stretched. Then snapped into place. All at once. The system stabilized. Silence. No more distortion. No more flickering. No more change. Everything was still again. But it wasn't the same. Not even close. "Scan results," the analyst whispered. Then stopped. "Report," Velk said. The response came slowly. Carefully. As if saying it wrong might change it. "It's stable." "Of course it is." Velk's eyes didn't leave the display. "Anything left of the original system?" The analyst checked. Then shook his head. "No. Nothing. Not a single trace." Velk exhaled slowly. Then asked the only question that mattered now. "What is it now?" The scan completed. The answer appeared. And for the first time, no one on the bridge could speak. Because what replaced the system wasn't debris. Wasn't silence. Wasn't even emptiness. It was something new. Something structured. Something connected. Velk stared at it. And finally understood. They hadn't just witnessed an event. They had witnessed expansion. And whatever this system was, it had just grown. The silence didn't last. It never does. Velk was still staring at the transformed system when the first new signal appeared. "Commander," the comms officer said slowly, as if unsure the words were real. "We're receiving a transmission." Velk didn't look away. "Source." The pause. "The entire system." That got everyone's attention. "Clarify," Velk said. "I can't," the officer replied. "It's not coming from a ship, or a station, or a single point. It's synchronized. Every structure in the system is emitting the same signal. A system-wide broadcast. Perfectly unified." Velk felt that cold realization return. "Patch it through." For a brief second. Nothing. Then the bridge filled with a sound. Not noise. Not static. The tone. Resonant. Layered. It didn't hurt. But it didn't feel natural either. It felt intentional. "What is this?" someone whispered. The science officer's hands trembled over the console. "It's not random. There's structure in it. Repeating sequences. No, evolving sequences. Is it a language? Velk asked. I don't know, came the answer. But it's adapting. Of course it was. Velk stepped closer to the main display. Try to map the pattern. The system began analyzing. The tone shifted. Slightly. As if reacting. It's responding to the scan, the analyst said, voice tight. Every time we isolate a pattern, it changes. Then stop isolating, Velk ordered. Observe only. The scan halted. The tone stabilized again. Velk narrowed his eyes. It's aware. No one argued. Because that was the only explanation left. Commander, the navigation officer said quietly. If this is awareness, then what are we to it? Velk didn't answer immediately. He watched the system. Every structure. Every orbit. Every movement. Perfectly aligned. Perfectly synchronized. Like a single organism. Not enemies, he said finally. The Drulux. Why not? Someone asked. Velk gestured at the display. If it wanted us gone, we would be gone. Instantly. Just like everything else that was here before. Silence followed that. Because it was true. Whatever this thing was. It didn't struggle. It didn't fight. It simply acted. Then what are we? The comms officer asked again, quieter this time. Velk considered that. Observers, he said. The words settled uneasily. Because observers don't interfere. Observers watch. And hope they're not noticed. The tone shifted again. Sharper. More focused. The analysis system lit up. Commander, the analyst shouted. It's locking onto us. Velk's pulse didn't rise. He had expected this. Maintain position, he said calmly. Sir? Do it. No evasive maneuvers. No countermeasures. Nothing. They stayed exactly where they were. The tone condensed. The layered resonance narrowing into something precise. Directed. At them. It stopped. Dead silence filled the bridge. Did we lose it? Someone whispered. No, Velk said. Because the sensors were still active. Still tracking. Still focused. It's done analyzing us. A chill spread across the room. What happens now? The science officer asked. Velk watched the system. Watched the structures. Watched the impossible order of it all. Something changed. Not in the system. In their own ship. Commander, the engineer snapped. We're getting internal readings. Something's interacting with our systems. Damage. No, the engineer replied, confusion overriding fear. It's not damaging anything. It's reading. Reading. The same thing they had tried to do. Velk almost smiled. Let it, he said. Sir. It already could have destroyed us, Velk said flatly. If this is communication, this is the only version we're getting. No one argued after that. The ship went still. Every system monitored. Every signal tracked. Seconds stretched. The screens flickered. Not violently. Not destructively. Smoothly. Controlled. The data displays shifted. Reorganized. Simplified. What is it doing? The analyst whispered. Velk leaned in. Because now. He understood. It's translating. The tone returned. But different this time. Less alien. Less chaotic. Structured. And then, for the first time, it spoke. Not in sound. Not in symbols. But in something every system on the ship could process. A message. Precise. Undeniable. The entire bridge froze as it appeared. Velk read it once. Then again. Just to be sure. It didn't change. It didn't need to. Because it was already perfectly clear. Connection established. No one moved. No one spoke. Does that mean this wasn't the end? It wasn't even a warning. Velk straightened slowly. Eyes locked on the message. Mind racing ahead of the moment. Because if this thing could rewrite systems, if it could replace reality, if it could speak, then there was only one conclusion left. This was never an attack, he said quietly. All eyes turned to him. Velk didn't look away from the screen. It was an introduction.